You ever wake up one morning, look out your window, and feel like your retinas just got personally attacked? Because that is exactly how my Tuesday started. It was 6:30 a.m. The birds were chirping, coffee was brewing, and life felt normal. Until I looked across the street and saw Tom S. house glowing like a radioactive lime popsicle. I mean it, the man had painted his entire two-story house neon green, not a soft pastel green, not a friendly mint. I am talking full-on highlighter bright. You can see it from space green. I blinked once, twice. Nope, still green. I even thought maybe I was still dreaming, but then I saw Tom out front, hands on hips, proudly admiring his masterpiece, like Michelangelo unveiling the Sistine Chapel. My wife stumbled out of the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. Why does it look like Shrek moved in across the street? I said, no idea. But the HOA is going to have a meltdown. See, our HOA had rules for everything. Fence, height, mailbox color, even what brand of mulch you could use. But paint color, oh, that was their holy scripture. Every house had to be earth tone, beige, brown, or gray. Basically, the color palette of boredom. And Tom was a walking middle finger to conformity. He had moved in about 6 months earlier, already making waves with his loud lawnmower, his constant grilling, and his habit of blasting 80s rock while washing his truck. He was harmless, just allergic to quiet. So when he painted his house neon green, it was not an accident. It was a statement. By 9 a.m., the HOA president, Mrs. Whitaker, was on the scene. She was this strict, sharp-tongued woman who wore pearls to pick up her mail and once fined someone for leaving their trash bin visible for more than 30 minutes past collection time. She stood in Tom's driveway holding a clipboard, jaw practically locked in place. "Thomas," she began, this color is not approved." Tom turned to her, grinning. "Oh, really? Show me where it says I cannot have a greenhouse." Mrs. Whitaker flipped through her precious binder. Page 47, Section 3, Paragraph 5. All house exteriors must be neutral in color and blend with the natural surroundings. Tom shrugged. "Green is natural. Trees are green. Grass is green. Looks pretty natural to me." I had to bite my tongue not to laugh. Mrs. Whitaker sputtered. "This shade is offensive." Tom crossed his arms. "Then do not look at it." That was the moment I knew this was going to be legendary. Within a day, every neighbor had heard about it. Some were furious, some were secretly loving it, and others were just grabbing popcorn. The HOA sent out an emergency meeting notice for urgent aesthetic disruption. That night, we gathered in the community hall. Mrs. Whitaker stood at the podium, practically trembling. Behind her was a projector screen showing a massive photo of Tom S.'s house, glowing so bright you could almost feel the heat from it. She dramatically announced, This atrocity violates everything our community stands for." People started whispering. Someone muttered, "It is just paint." Another neighbor said, "Honestly, it is kind of cheerful." Mrs. Whitaker gasped, like someone had just cursed in church. "Cheerful? It is a public nuisance. We have received 5 complaints already." Tom raised his hand from the back of the room. "Actually, 4 of those were from you." The room cracked up. Mrs. Whitaker turned red. "You are being fined $100 per day until the color is corrected." Tom leaned back, smirking. "You could send the fines. I will frame them." That is when things got really funny. The next morning, Tom put up a huge sign in his front yard that said, "Under construction, artistic vision in progress." And get this, he added more colors. Bright orange shutters, hot pink flower boxers, a purple door. The place looked like a Skittles factory exploded. People started driving through just to see it. Some took pictures, others honked in support. Even the mailman slowed down just to laugh. Mrs. Whitaker, oh, she was livid. She started parking her car across the street just to glare at it. Meanwhile, Tom was loving every second. He even invited the neighborhood kids over one weekend to help him add details. By the end of the day, there were hand-painted sunflowers on the garage, smiley faces on the fence, and a cartoon frog by the mailbox. I overheard one kid say, "This is the coolest house ever." And honestly, it kinda was. The HOA meetings turned into pure chaos. Half the board wanted him to repaint. The other half started questioning why the rule even existed. One guy even said, "Maybe we should allow some color. The neighborhood looks like a cardboard box factory." Mrs. Whitaker glared at him like he had committed treason. At that point, everyone realized this was no longer about paint. It was about principle. Tom had become a folk hero. People started secretly siding with him, waving as they passed by. One lady even baked him cookies and said, for the brave soldier who stood up to beige tyranny. The local paper somehow caught wind of it and published an article titled, "Man's Neon House Sparks HOA War and Wins Hearts." Once that hit the news, everything changed. People from neighboring towns came to see the greenhouse. Some left sticky notes saying things like, "Love the color," or "Stay bright." Tom's house had become a tourist attraction, and Mrs. Whitaker, she was losing her mind. She tried calling emergency board sessions, drafting new rules, even threatening legal action. But at this point, the HOA lawyer had already advised her to back off, because technically, there was no explicit rule against that shade of green. So, she did what any defeated bureaucrat would do. She retreated. By the end of the week, she had taken down the meeting flyers and stopped driving past Tom's place altogether. And the rest of us, we enjoyed our newfound freedom to smile. By the time the local newspaper called Tom a legend, things had reached a level of absurdity that even sitcom writers would envy. His neon green house was shining so bright, delivery drivers were using it as a navigation landmark. I was walking my dog one evening when a pizza guy stopped me and asked, "Hey, you know where the bright green house is?" I just pointed and said, "Buddy, you could not miss it if you tried." Tom was sitting on his porch, drinking lemonade from a mason jar, sunglasses on, even though the sun had gone down. His front yard looked like a carnival wind spinners, solar lights, even a neon flamingo or two. It was chaos, but happy chaos. "Hey neighbor," he called, "you want some lemonade? It glows in the dark." I laughed. "Tom, you have single-handedly broken our HOA." He grinned. "About time someone did. I'm just doing a public service." And honestly, he kinda was. See, the strangest things started happening. People began loosening up. A few houses down, the Petersons added a red door. Across the street, the Jenkins painted their shutters sky blue. Someone even put up a flamingo lawn ornament, clearly in solidarity with Tom's rebellion. And Mrs. Whitaker, oh, she was fuming. You could practically see the steam rising from her driveway whenever she drove by. She started sending reminder emails about visual harmony and community uniformity, but nobody was listening anymore. At one point, she even tried calling a special HOA vote to restore the traditional neighborhood aesthetic. But the attendance was, let us just say, not in her favor. Only 3 people showed up. Her husband, and her cat, who she brought in a carrier, by the way. Meanwhile, Tom was outside hosting what he called his Color Freedom BBQ. He put up a banner that read "Long live lime green" and invited the entire street. I kid you not, it was the biggest neighborhood gathering we had ever seen. People brought food, drinks, lawn chairs, and music. Kids were running around playing tag, laughing. Someone even brought glow sticks and waved them around the house like it was a concert. Tom stood on his porch, arms open wide, and yelled, "To freedom! May your paint never be beige." The crowd cheered like it was the 4th of July. That night, under the soft glow of fairy lights and neon reflections, it hit me. This ridiculous stunt had done something powerful. It broke down the invisible walls between neighbors. Before all this, everyone kept to themselves. Now, people were talking, laughing, actually enjoying the community again. The HOA had wanted perfection, but Tom had brought personality. And the more Mrs. Whitaker tried to fight it, the more people resisted her. A few days later, she sent out another notice. Subject: mandatory repainting order. Homeowners are hereby required to maintain exterior colors within the approved neutral palette. Non-compliance will result in immediate fines. But here was the catch. She needed a majority board vote to enforce it. And thanks to Tom's unexpected charm campaign, 2 new members had joined the HOA board. Both of them were his BBQ buddies. At the next meeting, Mrs. Whitaker slammed her binder on the table and said, "We must act before this neighborhood turns into a circus." One of the new members calmly said, "It already is, and people seem happy." She nearly dropped her pen. "You cannot be serious." "Oh, we are?" The other member said. "You wanted harmony, right? Well, everyone's getting along for once." Mrs. Whitaker glared at them, realizing the board was no longer on her side. Tom had outsmarted her without even trying. And then, just to rub salt in the wound, the local morning show ran a short segment about the happiest street in town, featuring Tom's greenhouse as the background. The reporter literally said, "Sometimes, a little color is all it takes to brighten up a neighborhood, and a few attitudes." You could almost hear Mrs. Whitaker grinding her teeth from a mile away. The next day, a delivery truck stopped by and dropped off something massive at Tom's house. Everyone peeked out their windows to see what it was. It was a giant inflatable green dinosaur, the same shade as his house. Tom inflated it on his front lawn, tied a bandana around its neck, and named it Freedom Rex. Within hours, the dinosaur became a local icon. People stopped for photos. Kids waved at it on their way to school. Someone even made a parody Instagram account called @GreenhouseLegend. Tom, being Tom, leaned into it completely. He started posting daily photos of Freedom Rex with captions like, "Still brighter than HOA's attitude. Day 15. No regrets." At this point, even Mrs. Whitaker's husband seemed amused. The woman tried everything, warnings, fines, even letters from the HOA attorney, but nothing stuck. The lawyer finally told her, unless there is a specific rule against neon paint, there's nothing you can do. That broke her. She stopped showing up to meetings for a while. And just when everyone thought the war was over, Tom decided to throw one final punch, or should I say, one final coat. That weekend, he invited a few friends over, and together they painted one more detail on his house, a huge green smiley face above the garage with the words "Stay Bright" written underneath. I almost spit out my coffee when I saw it, but what happened next was even better. Instead of getting angry, the HOA sent out a letter that began with, "After careful consideration, the board has decided to allow limited creative expression on home exteriors, within reason." Translation: Tom won, and the cherry on top. Mrs. Whitaker quietly retired from her position a month later. Tom, he became a local legend. People still talk about the guy who painted his house neon green and made the HOA surrender. He even hosted one last community BBQ, where he raised his lemonade glass and said, "To the power of color, may your lives never be beige again." The crowd roared with laughter and applause. And you know what? I could not help but smile too, because every time I drove past his house, glowing in the sunlight like a giant lime popsicle, I remembered that sometimes the best way to fight dull rules is to shine brighter than they can stand. You would think the story ended with Tom's victory, the neon rebel who conquered the HOA. But no, Mrs. Whitaker was not the type to go quietly into the pastel night. After her retirement, everyone assumed she had finally given up her crusade for uniform beige. She stopped attending meetings, stopped sending emails, and for the first time in years, people actually relaxed. But that peace, oh, it was just the calm before the final storm. About 2 weeks later, I noticed something strange. Early in the morning, around 6:30, a delivery truck pulled up to Mrs. Whitaker's driveway. Then another, then another. By 9 a.m., her front yard was stacked with buckets of paint, hundreds of them. Bright pink, sunshine yellow, baby blue, every color that could make your eyes hurt. I stared out my window, coffee in hand, whispering, "No way, she would not. Oh, but she would." By noon, the retired HOA queen herself was outside, wearing paint-splattered overalls and a wide-brimmed hat like she was leading an art project from another dimension. And what did she do? She started painting her house bubblegum pink. Not a soft pink, not elegant. I am talking flamingo level, Barbie dream house, cotton candy apocalypse pink. Word spread fast. Within an hour, half the neighborhood was outside watching, phones out, filming. Even Tom came strolling over, lemonade in hand, sunglasses on. He stopped at her driveway and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, look who joined the revolution." Mrs. Whitaker turned to him, paintbrush in hand, and said with an evil little smile, "If you cannot beat them, blind them." Tom laughed so hard he almost dropped his drink. Welcome to the bright side, Whitaker. The irony was so thick, you could paint with it. By evening, her house was a masterpiece of madness. Pink walls, yellow shutters, turquoise trim. She even added a lavender mailbox, as if to say, "Take that, subtlety." It was like a candy store had exploded and decided to settle down in her yard. The HOA board was stunned. Nobody knew what to do. The very woman who once fined people for mismatched flower pots had just turned her house into an ice cream cone. And honestly, it was glorious. The next morning, a reporter came back for an update on Tom's story. When she saw both houses, neon green and flamingo pink, standing side by side like some bizarre art installation, she could not stop laughing. The headline the next day read, "HOA goes Technicolor, the street that refused to be beige." The article featured photos of Tom and Mrs. Whitaker standing in front of their houses, both wearing sunglasses, both smiling. And that is when it hit me. Somewhere between the paint fumes and the chaos, they had actually become friends. Oh, yes, you heard that right. Tom and Mrs. Whitaker, once mortal enemies, started hanging out. It began small. She came over to borrow a ladder, then returned it with a plate of cookies. Next, they were both seen in her driveway, comparing shades of paint and laughing like old war buddies. Apparently, She had decided that if she could not stop the color movement, she might as well lead it. Within a week, she created a brand new community group, not the HOA, no. This one was called the Brightside Club, motto be bold, not beige. Their first official act, organizing a color parade. Everyone was invited to decorate their houses, mailboxes, and even pets with safe, washable paint in the brightest colors they could find. When the day arrived, the entire street looked like a festival. Kids wore rainbow wigs. People set up lemonade stands. And there was even a prize for most eye-burning shade of the year. Tom won, obviously. But Mrs. Whitaker came in a close second, and she proudly displayed her trophy on her porch. A small, glittery paintbrush mounted on a plaque that said Reformed Beige Enforcer. The local news covered it again, this time dubbing our area the happiest block in the city. What used to be a boring, rule-obsessed neighborhood had become a tourist stop for people looking to take colorful selfies. And guess what? Property values did not drop. In fact, they went up. Turns out, people liked living in a place that had personality. A month later, the city council sent a letter of appreciation for encouraging community engagement and creativity. Tom framed it and hung it on his porch, next to a new sign that said, "Warning, Happiness Zone." As for Mrs. Whitaker, she became something of a local celebrity. Someone even invited her to speak at a community event titled How to Turn Conflict into Color. Her opening line was legendary. "I used to think beige was peaceful. Turns out, it was just boring." The crowd erupted in laughter, and that, my friend, was the perfect ending. From angry memos and fines to parades and friendship, all because one stubborn man decided his house needed to glow like a highlighter. Now, every time I walk past Tom's neon green house and Mrs. Whitaker's pink one beside it, I cannot help but grin, because what started as a battle between control and chaos turned into a lesson none of us expected. Sometimes, breaking the rules is not about rebellion. It is about reminding people how to live a little. Tom still hosts his Color Freedom BBQ every year, and Mrs. Whitaker still shows up, always first in line, wearing bright purple lipstick and carrying a tray of cookies shaped like paint cans. When someone once asked her, "Do you ever miss being in charge of the HOA?" she smiled and said, "Honey, I still run the neighborhood. I just do it in pink now." The whole place burst into laughter. And as the sun set that evening, its golden light bouncing off walls of lime green and cotton candy pink, the street glowed with something far brighter than paint. It glowed with joy.